Right now, America haunted by its ghost of shooting past. One day before the Newtown anniversary, another deadly school shooting just miles from Columbine High School in Colorado. And then later we will talk politics. John Boehner versus the Tea Party activist groups. Chris Christie on the hot seat for what may be political payback. And Bill de Blasio front and center as Mr. Progressive in our nation's capital today. Will any of that last? And later, the gender double standard. New ad says what most women have long known. They often can't get a fair fight in the court of public opinion. We'll get into all of that this evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thanks for joining us. What has been a very busy and depressing Friday evening, December 13th. We begin with yet another shooting and the frightening developing story out of Colorado. As I said off the top, we are approaching, and it was the intent of this program, to talk about the one-year anniversary of the Newtown massacre and what little has changed in many ways in the past year in terms of legislation. And we are reminded, sadly, with another tragic shooting, yet again at a school, yet again in Colorado. In fact, just 8 miles from Columbine. And for the very latest, let's bring in Andrew Whitman. Andrew?
And Rich, you mentioned the timing of this just before Newtown, also haunting by circumstance, not only the day before the Newtown anniversary. It happened, as Rich said, at a high school just 8 miles from Columbine. Of course, the scene of a 1999 school massacre that left 12 students and a teacher dead. It happened at Arapahoe High. It's a top-notch school that sends 90% of its graduates to college. Student there walked into the building with a shotgun looking for one particular teacher. That teacher found out about it, immediately left the building. The shooter then shot 2 students. One of them is in serious condition. That student may have actually tried to confront the gunman. That is still unclear. Another student was also shot with what's being described as a minor wound. The scene eventually playing out, sadly, like so many school shootings before it.
The suspect has been found inside the school, and he has deceased as a result of what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We are now slowly but methodically allowing students to leave the school in groups. We are bringing them to a location that's directly east of where we're standing.
Again, the student, the gunman, dead from a self-inflicted wound. Police also found what they believe is a Molotov cocktail at the school. They're now examining it. The school immediately implemented its active shooter protocol established after Columbine. Students, as you can see, led out to the school track with their hands on their heads. They were then each searched by police for weapons or evidence of some sort. Police do not believe anyone but the now dead gunman was involved. Rich?
Andrew, thank you very much. Now, as we said, the school shooting comes on the eve before the one-year anniversary of the Newtown shooting. One day after this emotional vigil at the National Cathedral in Washington, the focus in Washington as the press, for the most part, abided by the wishes of the people of Newtown and stayed away from that town on this awful anniversary to honor the wishes of obviously a community that's gone through so much. Let us bring in our table right now to discuss this subject and much more. Bill O'Reilly, Republican consultant at the political communications firm November and a columnist at Newsday. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. James Kelleher, president of the Westchester District of the American Psychiatric Association, also an associate professor of clinical psychiatry and behavioral sciences at New York Medical College. And a little bit later we'll be joined by New York Assemblywoman Shelley Mayer, a Democrat from Yonkers, and Andrew Whitman, who you met before, a senior political correspondent. And we'll talk about this, the facts unfolding. We don't want to ascribe motive or background because so much of it isn't known right now. But James, I'll start with you because you were coming in here to talk before Columbine, or I should say Colorado, was yet again on our radar. It's funny, we talk about the proximity to Columbine. This was 15 miles away from Aurora. Remember the movie theater shooting? I mean, just think about the nexus of what this area has gone through, but it isn't just the school shootings, it isn't just the movie theater shootings, it isn't just the college campus shootings, fill in the blank here. By now we've seen this in cities, in suburbs, in urban, in rural areas, at grammar schools, middle schools, high schools, name the place. And there seems to be commonality in that a troubled person, access to a gun, gets the gun, tragedy ensues. Tonight, I think a lot of people, maybe in the most telling thing, have the sense of almost resignation, that this is part of a new normal here. And I think that's as almost damning of anything that I can say tonight, that this isn't something that might shock the system, but it doesn't really surprise.
Well, let's hope and pray it's not the new normal, and we can do certain things to help that to be less frequent and hopefully never happen again. In terms of the mental health issues, it's really of primary importance to me that we recognize that the vast majority of people with mental illness are not dangerous. They are much more likely to be the victim of crime, tragically, than a perpetrator of crime. But these incidents really call everybody's attention to these issues, and it's unfortunate that the mental illness issue gets seen in this light.
Well, to that end, in almost every scenario that I can point out, whether it was in Tucson, Arizona with Jared Loftner, whether it was in Virginia Tech with a student opened fire on his campus, whether it was obviously what we saw unfolding in Newtown, and I can go down the list, everybody later on says that person was very troubled. There were warning signs. There was obviously a case where we have major issues. I mean, if you look at the Navy Yard shooting, is it a question that people don't know how to identify someone that's troubled versus someone that's troubled and dangerous? Is it that we don't have access to the proper psychiatric care? Is it that there isn't enough facilities for it? You're on the front lines of this. What is the real issue? Say you have an audience of watching and listening to you right now, and that the blank check, they say, go ahead, Mr. Keller, tell us what to do. What is the answer?
Well, it's a very complicated question because obviously there's civil rights issues that are involved here, and they're very important to protect and for us to look at carefully. There is also, and this is really very clear, the potential for great help for folks with mental illness. In many cases, this is looking retrospectively, and I'm not speaking about any specific individuals or cases, but there's a literature about this. Oftentimes the violent perpetrators of crime are suffering from depression or paranoid psychosis. Both of those conditions can be treated, in the case of depression, quite effectively with medication and psychotherapy. Paranoid psychosis can be treated, the treatment in that case is weighted more towards medication. We have resources in this country to treat folks with mental illness. We treat everybody with a great deal of respect, with a view to helping everybody attain a high level of functioning, and we have a great level of success. I'm proud to say that.